Imagine this. A woman in the 1800s, surrounded by men in top hats and cigars, steps into the financial world where women weren't even allowed to vote. And she doesn't just survive, she dominates. She builds an empire worth over $100 million dollars in the early 1900s. That's more than $4 billion dollars in today's money. Her name, Hettie Green, a ruthless, brilliant, frugal investor. So feared and misunderstood that the newspapers of her time called her the Witch of Wall Street. But behind that cruel nickname lies one of the greatest minds in financial history, a woman who played the game of money better than anyone else. While others chased luxury, she chased value. While Wall Street's men gambled on trends, she waited patiently, striking only when everyone else was afraid. And the craziest part? She didn't have a trading floor. She didn't run a firm. Her office was a small desk inside a bank vault, surrounded by stacks of bonds, ledgers, and cash. She turned a small inheritance into an empire, during times when women weren't even supposed to own property. So how did she do it? How did one woman outsmart the titans of finance and become one of the richest Americans of all time, while being labeled as a villain by the very society she beat? Stick with me till the end, because by the time we're done, you'll see the real story of Hettie Green, not as a witch, but as a financial genius who rewrote the rules of money. Welcome to our channel, where we uncover the real stories behind the world's greatest traders, investors, and market legends. We're building the biggest trading and finance channel on YouTube, and your support makes it possible. So make sure to subscribe, turn on the bell, and join a community that refuses to settle for average. Now, let's go back to 1834, to the birth of a girl who would one day terrify Wall Street. Hettie Green was born Henrietta Howland Robinson in 1834 in New Bedford, Massachusetts, a prosperous whaling town. Her family was wealthy, old money, but they lived by strict values of hard work, frugality, and self-reliance. Unlike most girls of her era, little Hettie was obsessed with numbers. While others played with dolls, she was reading her father's accounting books. By the age of 6, she was reading financial newspapers aloud to her grandfather, learning how to track markets before most kids could write. Money wasn't something she wanted, it was something she understood, and that early exposure would shape her forever. Her family taught her one golden rule: never spend what you can invest. When her father passed away, he left her a fortune, roughly $7 million in mid-1800s money. But Hettie didn't spend it on mansions or jewelry. She saw that inheritance as capital, a weapon she could use to grow even more. And that's exactly what she did. By her 30s, Hettie Green began making headlines. She invested in government bonds, railroads, mortgages, and real estate, all during an era when women couldn't even open bank accounts without a man's signature. But she didn't care. She was cold, calculated, and always a step ahead. During the Panic of 1873, while the financial world burned, Hettie did the unthinkable. She started buying. Everyone else was running for the exits, but she saw blood in the streets as opportunity. That one move multiplied her fortune overnight. When people panicked, Hettie got rich, and that became her pattern. She thrived in fear. The worse the economy looked, the better she performed. She would lend money to banks, railroads, and even cities, but always on her terms. She once bailed out the city of New York, yes, New York City, during a liquidity crisis, charging a handsome interest rate that made her millions. That was the moment Wall Street realized. This woman wasn't to be underestimated, but power comes with enemies, and Hettie's refusal to live by society's expectations turned her into a villain in the press. Newspapers mocked her appearance, her voice, even her frugality. They called her the Witch of Wall Street. Why? Because she didn't play their game. She wore the same black dress every day. She refused to waste money on luxuries, and she demanded accountability from the men who owed her. They couldn't control her, so they ridiculed her. Hettie's true genius lay in her discipline. She followed principles that today's best investors, from Warren Buffett to Ray Dalio, still live by. She bought assets when they were undervalued. She held cash when markets were greedy. She never followed the crowd. She once said, "When I see a good thing going cheap because nobody wants it, I buy a lot of it and tuck it away." That sentence could have been spoken by Buffett himself. Her portfolio was massive. Bonds, mortgages, railroads, real estate from Chicago to New York. She even invested in war bonds during the Civil War and made enormous profits. Yet despite her billions, she lived with extreme frugality. She walked everywhere to avoid carriage fares. She haggled over groceries. She once refused to pay a doctor for her son's leg injury, treating it herself, which led to tragic consequences. To the public, this made her a monster. To her, it was logic. Why waste when you can invest? She lived her entire life by one belief. Money wasn't for showing off, it was for freedom. As decades passed, Hettie Green became one of the most powerful financiers in America. She owned huge parts of Manhattan real estate, railroads, and municipal bonds. Banks came to her for loans. She controlled capital flow like a shadow banker, all from a small office inside a vault at Chemical Bank. But behind the fortune was loneliness. Her husband left. Her children lived under the pressure of her discipline. She trusted few and lived modestly until her final days. In 1916, at the age of 81, Hettie Green passed away, leaving behind an estate worth over $100 million. That's roughly $4.5 billion today. Even after her death, her influence shaped Wall Street for generations. Her son, Edward Green, continued her empire, investing in gold and railroads, using the same methods his mother taught him. And while the newspapers buried her name under the title witch, history has begun to tell the truth. Hettie Green wasn't evil. She was simply a woman born a century too early, one who refused to follow the rules of a man's world and proved she could beat them at their own game. So what can we learn from Hettie Green? That true wealth doesn't come from greed, it comes from discipline. That success doesn't care about gender, background, or public opinion, and that sometimes the world will call you crazy until the results make sense. Hettie Green didn't chase fame. She didn't crave luxury. She built her empire in silence and left behind a legacy of financial mastery that still stands today. Her story isn't just history. It's a reminder that greatness doesn't always look glamorous. Sometimes the richest person in the room is the one no one's looking at. This was the story of Hettie Green, the original witch of Wall Street. And if you made it this far, you're not just curious, you're driven. At Kuye Trade, that's the mindset we celebrate. Discipline, knowledge, and courage to think differently. We're building the biggest trading and finance channel on YouTube, and you're part of it. So before you go, hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and join us for more stories that uncover the hidden side of money, power, and the people who shaped our markets. Because the world's greatest financial stories are the ones you've never heard.